Let's start off by downloading MobiFlight. Go over to MobiFlight.com and download the latest version. You can click download the latest version here. And I actually like to save this to a very special folder. So you can go to your local disk, your main drive. This is the C drive for a lot of people. And then I actually made a special flight sim folder on the C drive. I have a directory for all of my flight sim stuff. It really helps me keep organized. It's flight sim right here, and it has all of the flight simulators right here with a folder inside the flight sim folder to the game files. So it's a shortcut folder that just takes you right into the game files, saves you a lot of time. I'll leave a link to the document with all of the common file folder paths to find your little flight sim folder, but you can go down a rabbit hole with it. For this one, I think it looks something like this. It really depends on your simulator, so I'll leave the document so I don't have to bore you right now. For MobiFlight, I made the folder and then auto-populated it with all of the MobiFlight stuff. For MobiFlight config files, this is where I keep all of the configurations so they're not wandering about space-time making trouble, you know. So you can add a new folder for MobiFlight and then save this installer.exe inside of the MobiFlight folder. Let's go into the MobiFlight folder we just created and run the installer. It says right here, Windows protected your PC. You're welcome. But to that, we say, no, get out of here. So you can click more info and run anyways. Now it's doing its stuff with the installation. It's making all the files and everything here. And you'll get a clean MobiFlight right here. Something cool about it is that it detected my Arduino right here. Look at that. This Arduino right here has nothing on it. It's a blank factory reset Arduino, so it has nothing on it. It needs to become a MobiFlight board, you know, come of age. So you can click OK to flash the firmware to it. The firmware is being uploaded, and so you can just wait till that happens. So now we have our blank MobiFlight. This is your blank slate where you get to make everything for your flight simulator. I would like to show off on MobiFlight.com, you know, that epic site, you got the program. You can go over to tutorials, and then under tutorials, you can see a bunch of fantabulous tutorials. Here's the tutorial I started following for the LED parking brake, and I find these to be pretty helpful. You can also see under community guides, this X-Plane quick start guide is super helpful for X-Plane custom data refs, especially this forum topic right here. Let's go over to our flight sim folder again, click MobiFlight, and then this connector.exe. If we make a shortcut, create shortcut, you can see this connector shortcut right here. You can drag this shortcut onto the desktop, and now you have a desktop shortcut you can open MobiFlight with. You can also right click it and pin to start. That'll just put it up here. And you can also, when you open it, pin to the taskbar. This gives you super easy access to MobiFlight, and hopefully it just saves you a little time instead of constantly digging through the folders. While we are in the neighborhood, let's actually show you the examples right here. In the examples folder here, you have a few, I think 6 tutorials here. There's a home cockpit, MobiFlight configuration file. You can open all of these with MobiFlight and then click on it here. You can assign an orphan serial, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but this is just a way you can get up and running without having to do any configuration. This is pretty cool right here. We have a modules checkmark, which means we have our Arduino, but we have 2 exclamation marks. They're angry. So we gotta go install our FSUIPC. We really need MobiFlight to grab values from the simulator and spit them back out. So for that, we'll use FSUIPC. Each simulator has a different FSUIPC version, so I'm going to show you how to download each of these right now. Skip ahead to your simulator's installation, or heck, watch all three for all I care. These timestamps are shown on the screen now. Okay, for prepared or FSX, you can go to fsuipc.com. The link's in the description because I know that's a funny word. FSUIPC version 4 is what you can use for FSX 4.976, and then version 5 you can use for prepared version 4, and then FSUIPC version 6.1.1 you can use for prepare 3D versions 4 and 5. Since I'm using FSX, let's download FSUIPC 4.976. Let's save this FSUIPC4 zip folder into our flight sim folder and then our FSX folder. This should work pretty nicely, and then from there we can just unzip it and run the installation. We can show this in your folder wherever you downloaded it, and then let's extract all from this folder. So unzip it, and then here we have our FSUIPC4 folder. Don't you wish it was that easy? Just open the folder and click the installation.exe. We protected your PC. Click more info, run anyways, and wait a minute, if we clicked don't run, would it just stay still or would it walk? Because I think it could find a loophole. So you have this little pop-up, and hopefully it says it installed okay, and you don't have a bunch of like worms in your computer that eat the cables. But you can just press OK, and now we can go ahead and register our version of FSUIPC. Except for we don't have to, actually. MobiFlight works with the unregistered version of FSUIPC, so right now we're just going to click Not Now. So we don't have to register FSUIPC. There's no real difference between the unregistered and the registered version of FSUIPC for MobiFlight. Let's test it out to see if it does in fact work. We're going to open FSX and click Run when this little security warning pops up.
The publisher could not be verified. Are you sure you want to run this software?
We can click Run here.
Would you like to designate this module as a trusted software?
We can then click Yes, so it doesn't pop up again. No offense, but we don't want to see you anymore, little mister.
That hurt!
Let's go flying, and now we can see that all three check marks are checked off. This SimConnect one is not relevant for FSX, but we can see that the FSUIPC status is a go. And the simulator loaded not a moment too soon. I can show off my amazing pilot skills now. I refuse to comment. But right here, the FSUIPC status is go, so we're ready to rock and roll. But what are these offsets? So the offsets are basically a bunch of fancy codes that you type into your computer, and then magical things happen with your simulator. Yes, that's how it works. But if we go over to our FSX game files over here and click the modules tab, this is like all the plugins basically, you can see FSUIPC. All of these fun files help FSUIPC work, so don't delete them please. But then under the FSUIPC documents, you can see the FSUIPC offset status PDF. This is such an important document that you can actually make a copy of it and put it inside your flight sim folder. Again, this is found under your flight sim folder. So mine was Steam, Steam Apps, Common, FSX, Modules, and then FSUIPC Documents. I'm going to put this in my FSX folder because it is very helpful. So the FSUIPC offsets list has a bunch of fancy codes that basically control your simulator. So we could look for gear and then see right here, there are gear control, 0 Bravo Echo 8, 4 bytes, and then you have up and down. That's fantastic. With these offsets, you can control a lot of things. There's heading, autopilot lock, the active comm frequency, so you have a lot of data that you can work with. Okay, FSUIPC for X-Plane. It might be hard to find, but if you actually type in XPUIPC, you can find the XPUIPC download. XPUIPC is a little different. It's not actually written by Pete Dowson, the FSUIPC man, and it basically translates the X-Plane data refs into FSUIPC offsets. X-Plane works primarily with data refs, and XPUIPC is a really helpful tool to get data refs into FSUIPC offsets. So we can click this little download XPUIPC for X-Plane, save it to our flight sim folder under X-Plane, and save it. We can unzip this folder named XPUIPC version and we have this XPUIPC folder right here. This has 32 and 64 for the 32 and 64 bit, and we can just copy this, Control C, and then paste it into our X-Plane game files. So once you're in the X-Plane game files, here's my path. Look under the Resources tab, and then go into the Plugins tab. So if we go ahead and paste it, now XPUIPC, this little file right here, the XPUIPC offsets PDF, is very similar to the FSX PDF, and it has a lot of data. You can do basically anything within reason. Here you can find landing lights. So you can find the lights right here. You can find the pitot heat switch, all sorts of stuff. It's very exciting. This right here is shortcut worthy, so we can create a shortcut and then drag it into our flight sim folder. Flight sim X-Plane. You can also just make a copy of this file. I don't know why I'm doing shortcuts. I think it's because I'm super crazy about them because I just started using them. If we go back to our X-Plane game files and then go under Resources and Plugins, this XPUIPC folder has something that we want. It's this XPUIPC offsets.cfg. You can open this with your notepad and go ahead and edit this if you want to. This is way more advanced. It involves actually like coding this and programming it. But basically, this shows you a bunch of the data refs right here, and then converts them into offsets. So this is what it's actually happening behind the scenes. You can see offset 0892 is an unsigned int 16, size in bytes 8, read and write, and then the magnetos. So it's really cool to see how this all works, and yeah. Woo. There you have it. Now that you have this XPUIPC offsets list right here, you can use a lot of these codes, put them into MobiFlight, put the size in bytes, and then use this data, which really makes me happy. Let's double check that this actually does work. So we can make a new flight right here, go to Customize, and start a flight. We can now see the sim status. Isn't really working. But once we load in, hopefully it does. So if we go over here, we can actually see that the XPUIPC status, check, it works. But if we hide MobiFlight, we will see something that will annoy us eventually. Wrong IP address, 10002. No NIC with this address found. So it gets super angry at us. And this will happen every time until you actually change it. So you can go into Plugins, XPUIPC, XPUIPC settings, and then you'll see that there's actually no IP address to change, so you get a little annoyed. You can tune this arbitrary number. I believe that's the delay or the logging period. You can read logging, and you can reload data refs, but that doesn't do any IP addressy stuff. So what we do need to do is going back into our X-Plane folder. So under Resources, Plugins, XPYPC, we can see a few of these folders. One of them has the offset. If we actually just go on to this new XPYPC readme.txt file, we can find this file that immediately gives away my IP address, so I have to really go ahead and blur that. So we have to go and edit the xpypc.ini file. Anything goes. So what we can do to find our IP address is go to X-Plane settings. I assume you know how to find it, but it's just this little button. It's kind of cute though, I like it. So then go to network and find your IP address. This machine's IP address. I'm not gonna share it with you, but basically we can put this fancy IP address right here into the server address right here. Save it, click done, and then we can actually reload our flight. And then, cross our fingers, the menu doesn't come up. It enjoys itself. It's free. Then if we relaunch X-Plane, do you see the resemblance? Castaways, we are castaways. Ahoy there, ahoy, we are castaways. Oh, okay, so basically what we notice right here is that there wasn't any error. No news is great news. We can open this up as many times as we'd like, and it won't give us that little error, which is kind of nice. We have FSUIPC and XPUIPC for FSX and X-Plane. So now let's go to Flight Sim 2020. This one is FSUIPC.com. For all you aviation nerds, that's Foxtrot, Sierra, Uniform, India, Papa, Charlie, Decimal, Charlie, Oscar, Mike. That gave me a headache. So you can click FSUIPC 7. This is for MSFS only. The other ones are below it. We're going to save it again in our Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 folder and install FSUIPC7.zip. I'm going to be completely honest, this one takes forever. Goodbye. So we have our install FSUIPC7.zip file right here, and we can just unzip it. Zoop. Right here. There's the install FSUIPC7. Install FSUIPC7. It reminds me of Emperor's New Groove, where they're like,
I'll turn him into a flea. A harmless little flea. And then I'll put that flea in a box. And then I'll put that box inside of another box. And then I'll mail that box to myself. And when it arrives, I'll smash it with a hammer.
Side tangent, but anyways, we have two files right here, the install FSUIPC7.exe and the offset status, version 0.19, or whatever your version is. Okay, so if we go over here, you can find a ton of the offset magical codes. So this gives you your local time in seconds, minutes, and hours, which is super cool. You can have ground velocity, true airspeed, indicated airspeed, all sorts of stuff. So that's where you find it, inside of the install FSUIPC 7 folder. You can click install FSUIPC7.exe, and then Windows protected your PC. You should thank us with like compensation or something. We are the best. We are the best. So we can just click more info. We need a lot more info. And run anyways. So now it pops up a wizard. Unfortunately, with this version, the wizard doesn't have magical powers, but I believe they're going to fix that in an update. So we can click next, and then we can read this big long agreement here. You're not permitted to edit, alter, modify, adapt, translate, or... You can click agree, and here's all of the components that are going to be installed. Just like with your car, you gotta have components. So FSUIPC will be installed. The boy. You also want to make sure WASM is installed. You also want to make sure it auto starts, and you can install the documentation and extras. We're going to install this in a new folder in our Flight Sim folder, FSUIPC 7 folder. Great. It's going to be installed there. We can just sit back and relax. Wow, that was quick. It just feels like these days we have less and less time to relax. Okay, so here's FSU IPC7 registration. You don't have to have a registered version of FSU IPC for MobiFlight. It works the same with or without a registration, so I'm just going to skip it, honestly. You can register if you want to use FSU IPC for other things, but it's honestly up to you. You don't need it. So we can add a desktop shortcut because we can always delete it. And now we're going to check that it actually works. You can click this little shortcut right here or just run it normally, I guess, and see that it works. Don't put cupcakes on your pizza or you'll break all the rules and you'll be a fool. I have to level with you. It's so fun to sing along to this song. Ready? Okay. Oh, FSU IP7.exe is trying to change or delete the file control list for MSFS build 99.txt in your protected documents folder. To stoop that low. What would you like to do? Allow app. Sheesh.
Better be okay with this.
Basically, FSU IPC needs to change some files because that's just how FSU IPC works. It kind of changes some of the files to make everything good to go. So just click got it. You're good. That's kind of its job. Let's double check with MobiFlight that the sim status is a go. And it is. Right here, modules is check, sim status is check, and sim connect is check. It's kind of cool that the only thing we really had to do anything for is this FSU IPC status. So that's super exciting.